I'm getting ready to build these arrows. I'm going to shoot the Ultra 246 limited 003 straightness 300 spine. Um, I'm not going to go into a lot of detail. I'm going to do just a super in-depth arrow build video. There's lots and lots and lots of arrow build videos on the internet that you can go to. I'll show you a couple of things that I think that are important or just personal to me for the way that I build my arrows. One is arrow wraps. I make my own. Okay, you can get this little slide cutter on Amazon. I had some old bonding wraps that I used as a template, and I bought a roll of Scotch Extreme Vinyl on Amazon, just the white, and I've got some silver that I use on some other arrows, and I just lay it out, mark my template out here on my cutter, and I slide through here and cut these out. You can make a gob of them out of one of those rolls, a bunch. I don't know how much is in a gob, but it's a lot. Like I say, I just mark them out based off of the old ones that I've used in the past. Slide them and cut them, and there you have it. And then I just put them on just like everybody else. Use a mouse pad. I've got this mouse pad here I bought on Amazon. It's a great big one. It's, I don't know, 2.5 feet long, and I just put it down on my workbench as a placemat, and that's what I use all the time for everything. So I'll get some of these built up. Maybe put some of this on like a time lapse or something like that, let you see the process a little bit of building them. And then I want to come back and show you guys how I build out my front end on these arrows. That's the little unorthodox method that I use that I want to show you guys. Okay, so once you get all your wraps cut, and why do we use wraps? They don't make it any easier to fletch them. Sometimes they make your fletchings stick a little better. The biggest reason I use them is I can see my arrows. I like to see them in flight, especially in hunting arrows. I want to know where I'm hitting, and I can find them a little easier whenever I miss or shoot through one. So that's why I shoot wraps. They're cool. Let's face it, we like to accessorize as bow hunters, as archers, and we want our stuff to look cool, and that's why I shoot them. Like I say, mostly because I can see them whenever I miss or whether in flight. So one thing you got to do though before you start putting them on there, unless you're running a wrap that runs, 5 or 6 inches down the arrow, 6 inches down the arrow, you need to make sure that you get your wrap in the right place. I know where I've got my clamp marked for where the back of my fletching needs to go. I know which one of these marks I need to index to keep it off my face, or just right as close back to my face as I can get. I might just barely feel it in my beard, but it's never caused me much of a trouble. So I want to make sure though that I keep my wrap centered. So I've got my fletching in the clamp. I take my wrap, because my wraps are just barely longer than the fletchings, and I'm gonna lay it up there, and I'm gonna give it a pencil mark to index where these things need to go on the shaft before I install them. And then once I get those marks in place, I'll mark the rest of my shafts. I'll index them all up here nice and tight, and then I'll put me a pencil mark on all of them so that I know where my fletchings need to go, or excuse me, where my wrap needs to. That thing's in the way. I need to know where my wrap needs to index to, and I can use. I'm going to grab one here real quick. I want to make sure that I get them all in the right place. Again, it's all about being OCD, right? So I bump these nocks up against here, and then I'll take my square and line it up with that mark, and there we go. That's where I need to put all of my wraps. I've got this big mouse pad again on my bark bench. I have to kind of hold one corner of the wrap down, get my pencil mark down here on this left edge, and then I roll my pencil mark down on the bottom side of the arrow so that I can see how square it needs to be and exactly where it needs to go. And then I just start rolling it. Once it contacts, I can take my finger out, roll them on good. And there they are. All right, so now that I've got my wrap on, I'm getting ready to start the fletching process. One of the things, I've got this AAE bits knob on my Bitzenberger. One of the things that I want to make sure I always do when I knock tune these bear shaft through paper, because different times I use a lot of different methods, and sometimes I like to shoot them through paper bear shaft and knock tune them to get a perfect hole and index my arrows. I'll mark the tops of them and index my knock, mark the tops of them, and I know that that's where how I want to fletch all of my arrows so that they're all, because I know they're all shooting the same. And I've got my jig marked for 3 fletch and 4 fletch where I want that mark to line up with my jig so that all my fletchings line up. And it's a little trial and error to get that done. The Altra arrows are, they claim they're 0 spine. And what that means is that they don't have a high spot or a low spot, that they'll all shoot the same no matter where the knock is turned. We're going to test that, see what that's like. But that being said, I'm going to make sure that my knob on my Bitzenberger, that I start every arrow in the same position. I know this one is you're supposed to be able to adjust it to replace veins and stuff like that, and that's fine. But whenever I'm going through and fletching a bunch of arrows, I want to make sure that I have this knob, and I'm going to use that screw hole as my indicator, facing up on every arrow. So that way every click of the knob that spaces the arrows exactly the same for every arrow. And I've already turned my nocks so that the label's up so that they'll all be the same. And is it that big a deal? No, it's not. It's just the way I like to do it. Okay, now I'm going to stick a few veins on these things. Flex fletch veins using the Silent Night. Nobody pays me to use their veins. Nobody gives me any veins. I use what I like. I bought some of these and have tinkered around with them over the last couple of years. A couple different sizes: the Silent Night 3-inch and the 2-inch on some different arrow configurations. Here's a 3D arrow with the 3-inch Silent Nights. Let's see, I've got some over here. 4 fletch, the SK2s. Played with a lot of different variations of that. There's a 3 fletch in here somewhere, but anyways, I've played with a bunch of different variations of the Silent Nights over the last couple of years. I've also shot the tack veins. I like the tack veins a lot. Those seem to be my 2 favorite that I'm using right now. I've shot the tack veins in this 4 fletch configuration, 2.75 for a hunting arrow, and it works really good. Makes those broadheads fly money. But so do the flex fletch, and I don't know. I just like them. I like I like the company. I like the people. That means a lot to me when it comes to products that I use. It's the people that support those products. If you're somebody that I deem not to be a good person and you're really blowing up somebody's product, I'm not going to use that product. I don't like to use products that are supported by goobers. I just don't. And some of the guys that I know that are supporting this company are genuinely stand-up guys that I support, and I like to support them by supporting their companies. So I'm gonna fletch up a couple of these with the 3-inch silent nights. Then I'm gonna get them cut down, and then I'm gonna get them ready to put the inserts in. And when we get to that point, I'll show you where it starts to get crazy. When you first, the Zing Cling glue, in my opinion, is the best glue on the market. I don't care whose veins you're using. This is good stuff. People complain about the primer pins and the extra steps. Guys, it's not an extra step. It's easy, and it works great. Don't overdo it, though. So when you first prime your primer pin, take you a wad of paper towels and do it, soak up a lot of that extra. Get it primed and get it kind of daubed down so it's not got a bunch of excess primer still on the tip before you start this process. And it's just real simple. It's just one stroke down, maybe one stroke back up. And then I blow on it to dry, make sure that the primer is dry before I apply any of the glue. Thin bead of glue. I'm pretty bad to daub it on there just a little bit at a time. And I'll tell you something else that I do. This is just an extra step, but I'll take one of these plastic flossers, one of these toothpicks, and I'll rub it down because I can get right in the middle of the trough on that vein, and I'll spread that glue out. Now, is that a lot of extra stuff? Yeah, it is. But these are my arrows. I'm not building them for somebody else. I'm going to take the extra time to make them right and make sure that I get good coverage and application. Then I'm going to take this and I'm just going to lay it down on a paper towel real easy and just kind of rock it up and absorb all the excess glue. I don't want a bunch of glue smeared on there. I'll index it to the back end of my jig. Come down with the back end first. Apply pressure. And I hold it for 10 or 12 seconds. Just enough time. It doesn't take long. Just enough time to get it good adhesion. Get good adhesion. Open your clamp. Squeeze it first. Lift it off. Make sure that your knock is still indexed into the knock receiver. Turn it to the next position and repeat. Always make sure, like I say, that you've got your clamp marked so that your veins go in the same position each time. And if you can't see, if you're getting older like me, go to Walmart, get you a pair of these cheap glasses. It's worth it. And it's hot out here today. Got fans going out here in the shop, but it also makes that glue run a little extra thin. So, and does these set up fast? Yeah, they do. They dry really fast. You can take them out and use them right away if you want. But if you'll let them set up for 24 hours, you'll make them, set them aside, and let them set up. Put them in not a super hot place, not a super cold place, but put them in the house, regular, normal temperature, and leave them for 24 hours before you use them. Guys, you'll be surprised, or no, you won't. You'll be amazed at how well your fletchings stick. It's crazy how good stuff works when you let it dry. Let me finish these up, and then let's look at some inserts. Okay, let's get back on this arrow build. We've got the fletchings complete. 3-inch Silent Night, 3 fletch, gold tip mini HD pin nocks, pin bushings. The arrow is cut to 27 inches carbon to carbon. All right, so Let's look at our inserts. Now this is where it gets unconventional. This is where I'm a little bit goofy. Um, at any given point during the fall, if you run into me in the woods somewhere, you're going to pick up my quiver and you're going to look in it and you're going to think, what in the world is this guy toting around in the woods? Because I may have 5 different types of broadheads in there, all different types. And I'm able to do that because, one, I've got a good tune on my bow, and 2, I take the time to make sure that all my arrows are as close to being the same as possible, and they don't have to be perfect. But let me show you what I'm going to do this year. 51 or 2 grains. This fan over here is causing the scale fits. 50 grain insert, right? 100 grain fill point. Screw them together. So I can make it balance. Weighs 150-ish grains, right? Okay. 125 grain, just cheap fill point, right? Okay. Standard Ultra insert, I think it weighs around 16 grains. Okay. Now, that together weighs 140-ish, 140. So if I add a 10 grain weight to the back of it, simple math tells me that puts me at 150 grains, right? All right. 85 grain fill point. Rolling around there pretty close, right? Another 16 grain insert. And if I add a 50 grain point weight to the back of it, what's that give me? 150 grains. So what I can do is I can now take these 3 different setups and I'll mark my arrows, 85, 125, and 100. The 100s are easy to tell because they're going to have the brass inserts, right? But the other 2, I'll mark them 85 or 125, and that'll tell me what points I can use on these arrows, right? So let's just get it's going to change just a little bit. I'm going to put a little glue on this. I lost my little egg crate piece. Keeps my arrow from rolling off. Let's see if I can get it to balance. Let's weigh this arrow. Let's see where it's going to end up. $400. Make sure my fletchings aren't hitting. Looks like it's going to be 450 grains. Let me try that again. All right, so we're going to put the 100 grain brass insert in there. We'll weigh this arrow all together. Is 152.4 grains. And it's going to change just a few grains once I glue them in. But all of these arrows are going to weigh within a few grains of one another. And I can shoot I can shoot 100s, 85s, and 125s. All right, so a 452 grain arrow. That's going to work good for me. Why mess with those inserts? Why do I care about shooting the different types of point weights? Well, I like to shoot lots of different broadheads. One of my favorites over the past couple of years has been this 100 grain mega meat. All right, I've got some 100 grain slick tricks that I'm going to try this year. I've got some 85 grain Montex that I like. 85 grain Thunderheads. I've got a bunch of these, and they've worked really good for me in years past. I shoot a 100 grain Magnus Stinger buzz cut. So, a 125 grain Montec. I've got some 125 grain buzz cuts. I like to shoot a lot of different stuff. I like to just play with different things and see how well they work in the field. And the way I tune these bows, they're all going to hit the same. They won't fly the same. I'm not going to get so technical and specific to try to convince you that they all fly exactly the same. No, they don't. But if they hit the same, that's all that matters, right? So some of y'all are going to say, well, if it doesn't fly the same, it won't hit the same. You got to understand what your ability level is. What's your group size at a given distance? What's your maximum effective hunting range? 40 yards is usually maxed out for most whitetail hunters. What's your group size look like at 40 yards? Is it 2 inches, 3 inches, 4 inches? And be honest. Don't just say, oh, they're all touching at 40 yards. No, they're not. I compete against some of the best in the world, and I've had some pretty good days, and my groups don't always touch at 40 yards. Neither do theirs. Those guys are the best that there is. And reality is that whatever your given average group size is at a certain distance, that's what your expectations should be. You're not carrying a hooter shooter to the woods. You're not shooting this out of a shooting machine. You're not shooting in a vacuum or in perfect conditions. It is your average group size at a given distance, and those should be what dictate and guide your expectations for what your equipment will do and what you can do with your equipment. Yes, everything is eliminated down to the next degree whenever our stuff is perfect, and I want my stuff to be as perfect as possible, but experience and history and testing has taught me that this works for me. And when I get this Magnus Stinger buzz cut, this 100 grain Magnus Stinger buzz cut hitting in the same place as these field points at 40 yards, everything else usually just kind of comes together. I can screw anything I want to on the end of those arrows, and they'll work after I do that. So I'm going to show you how I do it. It starts through paper. It's very important to shoot very stiff arrows. It's very important to get perfect arrow flight. This is where some of the techniques that we use for target archery do not apply to hunting equipment. And I'm going to show you what those are. But that pretty much completes the arrow build. This is the arrow that I'm going to be running out of the Ethos this year. I'm going to build some of these up for testing. And I think we're pretty much ready to put the bow together. We'll put that together tomorrow. I've got all the pieces and parts, sights, rests. I'll get it all put together, do a real quick video on that, and then we'll start shooting through paper and see what we can make it do at distance.